Richard.
You're welcome.
So tell me when we're
All right, Richard, go ahead, do the thing.
Do the thing, Richard.
All three platforms are on?
Okay.
Waiting for the red light. There it is.
Hello, everybody. This is Paula. This is the Common Book Show. And I'm here today with Richard. I'm going to go according to where they are in the squares. This is Family Squares or whatever that's called. Hollywood Squares. And Tony. And we have our mystery guest.
Paul Lind.
And, of course, we have Brian. And we have my son, Tom, on drums. And so this week I haven't done a lot of reading, but I did have an interaction with my niece in Oregon. She had mentioned to me that there's this giant pumpkin in Clarence at the pumpkin farm, and she said I should probably take the kids to see it. So somehow or other we got into the situation where I quoted Peter Pumpkin Eater to her, but because I'm not 12 anymore, I had to look it up, so I looked it up online, and it's Peter Pumpkin Eater had a wife and couldn't keep her. He put her in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well. It seems logic. I mean, it really wouldn't fly with the woke generation, but it seems to me now, this is how I would interpret this. I would say he had a wife and he was struggling financially. So he got this giant pumpkin, he carved it out, and he made a house for her to live in the pumpkin shell. That would be my interpretation of this little rhyme. But there's two interpretations of this little rhyme. And not in a million years could I have guessed this. Okay, so the first one is, the speculation is, okay, one probability of the meaning of this nursery rhyme acclaims it to a chastity belt. Peter was married to a woman who was unfaithful to him. Iron underwear, which is a chastity belt, was called a pumpkin shell. This clothing item that some husbands forced their wives to wear was locked. The key was kept in the husband's pocket. Now, that's bad enough for kids to be, jumping rope to this thing. But this one is even better. The wife that couldn't be kept in this rhyme, which the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes notes first appears in the 1790s, didn't keep running away or anything. Rather, she was supposedly a prostitute. Some historians believe that Peter the Pumpkin Eater, tired of his wife's extracurricular activities, then murdered her and hid her body in a pumpkin.
That's what I was thinking.
Was it really, Brian? Wow, you got a sick mind. Okay, and even...
You think maybe it was a pimp?
Series on Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's really good. It's a guilty pleasure, but watch Dahmer on Netflix. I already knew all of it.
Oh, man. Okay, so the thing is, an even more outrageous interpretation of Peter Pumpkin Eater's meaning is that it's about the 13th century English King John, who famously pickled a rebellious noble's wife into bickled a rebellious noble's wife into a wall to starve to death. Well, I don't know what that has to do with
The
Peter.
Magna Carta, that King John.
Yeah, that King John. Yeah. So this is what we'll, if we have lulls in the conversation, I'll go back to some of these because there's more.
But you say how far back does the Pumpkin Eater poem or nursery rhyme go back?
There's a couple different interpretations, like the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, of which I did not know existed.
Was a thing, yeah.
It said it appeared in the 1790s.
Okay.
Okay, and this other book says it was is 1825. So, and then there was one then the one about the wall. Bickled. What's bicked. Bricked. Oh my God.
There you go. Okay.
Bricked.
Bricked up.
Why couldn't I see that?
I don't know.
My brain was not picking it up. Bricked. Okay. That's from the 13th century, so that's the 1200s. Yeah. I mean, that's insanely old.
Hey,
yeah.
You're 15 minutes late, you pick her up in the wall.
Yeah, you don't have to get that close. I think if you get too close, we can't hear you. So you got to get right about there. I think you're good.
A couple things come to mind. I'm sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No, you're going in the wall. Dinner's late. Sorry.
A couple things come to mind. 13th century, even 18th century, life was a lot harder back then, and I think people took the good with the bad, and death was something that was much closer to people. So it isn't surprising that those kinds of ideas and sentiments would be reflected, even in nursery rhymes. If you look at Warner Brothers cartoons from the 1940s and 50s and even earlier, there's some really dark stuff in there that was made by adults for children. And if you watch Bugs Bunny cartoons and you read between the lines, you say, really? Because today those are shocking. They'd get canceled.
Those Bugs Bunny cartoons, I went to, when I lived in New York, there was they had one of Fritz Freeling.
Fritz Freeling,
yeah. He did a talk, and they showed some cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, that guy said that they wrote those cartoons for each other.
Okay.
They wrote the cartoons for each other. They did not write them for children.
I heard they were written for
Maybe those nursery rhymes were kind of like Fritz Freeling. You know, they're writing them for themselves. The kids are never going to know.
Well,
they're just going to skip rope.
I think what happens is they become so famous, these little murders or whatever, that the kids just start using it. I don't know.
Well, isn't Ring Around the Rosie about the plague?
It is.
Right?
Yeah, I've got that
one. It's a pretty gruesome.
This one, it says, according to urban legend, this nursery rhyme is reference to the 1665 Great Plague of London. The ring around the rosy is supposedly a reference to the bubonic plague rash. The pocketful of posies describes the handful of herbs people would carry around to mask the smell of sickness. And the last two lines, they're the darkest of all. We all fall down. Refers to everyone dying, and the ashes are the cremated bodies.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And little children singing that. Right?
Yeah, you're still too close there, Brian. So I couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, in the 1400s, half of Europe died. Half of the population.
Yeah, I don't know.
I heard that before.
So much for COVID.
Yeah. I was just watching something about that. I don't remember what I was watching because my brain is totally fried. Totally and completely fried. Okay, so all right, let's get off the nursery rhymes. Richard, what's the first thing on your?
The first thing is on my list has to do with the art world.
The art world, okay.
And the latest controversy that is taking place in the art world.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Documenta?
No.
I'm not.
No, I've never heard of it.
Picture the Allentown Art Festival for a city in Germany where the city invests massive amounts of money so that this is a world-class attraction.
Yeah.
All right? So roughly maybe a dozen or so artists are accepted. Thousands are invited to apply. Mm-hmm. It started because, remember in the 1930s, Hitler had a exhibition of deviant art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Inviting the German people, come and see what
the Jews are up to.
I didn't know that was it. It
was a lot of Jewish art and music that was regarded as decadent and below the level of the Aryan art. Yeah.
So after the war ended and time went by, this city said, why don't we have the opposite of the deviant art exhibition and show all cutting edge stuff?
Well, how is that the opposite?
They wouldn't show Picasso's work at the deviant art thing because they said it was decadent, it was modern, and the modern is the destruction of civilization.
Yeah.
And so the opposite would be, let's show what the most modern artwork is.
Okay.
Let's do the opposite of what the Nazis did.
Okay.
Incidentally, when this deviant art thing happened in the 30s, in Paris, they also did the opposite.
Oh.
So this isn't really that original. Mm-hmm. But the German people feel like it should come out of Germany. If we did the first one, we should do the definitive second one. And they've had it every year since. Mm-hmm. So if you can get invited to put your art in Documenta, A, you get a nice chunk of money, but B, you get a lot of fame.
Right.
Because it means you are on the cutting edge.
Right. It'll make your artwork worth more.
So things went terribly awry this year. Okay? Now, what's odd is this thing's been going on since the 1950s.
Uh-huh.
However, this year's exhibit was called Documenta 15. I couldn't figure out why they're calling it 15. It should be like 65 or something. Unless they have it like once every 10 years
Maybe
or something.
maybe the 6 on their keyboard, bit the dust.
So I want to show you what caused all the fuss.
Okay.
Two exhibits out of the 12 artists caused a great fuss, and it's a very interesting thing that happened.
Okay. I'm getting nervous.
Why, you think that your show is going to get in trouble now?
No. I mean, not. I'm just getting. Are they shocking, horrifying images?
That's what I want to ask you. That's why I want to show them to you.
Whatever it is, I didn't do it this time.
That's right. I'm okay with Tony's art, so I'm probably going to be okay with that.
Documenta 15. Oh, come on. Documenta 15. And now let's look and see what comes up. Okay, so now image number 1, all right,
Okay.
was this one.
Are we going to be able to see this on the?
If the engineer will let us. Okay.
Okay, let's see.
Now, do you see anything anti-Semitic in here?
Anti-Semitic. I don't.
Because the various Jewish organizations around the world that monitor anti-Semitism and culture, they noticed this particular of the 12 exhibits, and they said, hey, come on. Can't you see what they're doing is they're vilifying the Jews?
I don't see anything about. I mean, unless there's some kind of iconography I'm not aware of.
I see.
Like that clown image or that whatever that devil clown image is that like something that
They are the people who are objecting to this strenuously are saying, if you look, can we see the image, please? If you look all the way to the right, somebody has a bowler hat.
okay.
That's supposed to represent a Jewish banker.
How?
Now, the thing that you called a clown,
Yeah.
they say that must represent the devil that is controlling the Jewish banker.
That's a bit of a stretch.
That's
What I thought.
I thought it was an attack on Trump or something.
That's
Unless the Germans would recognize that kind of iconography from the Nazi era, that there were specific iconic representations
right. Well, that's
that
what
we
I
wouldn't
was,
know.
That's what I'm saying is were those images used by the Nazis as a
Typically Jewish people as devils, and they drew them with horns on their head.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that, but I mean, just the fact that there's a devil in that painting doesn't necessarily mean it was representing a Jew. To
Right,
me,
I agree. But they don't see it that way, though.
well,
Yeah.
I'm not immersed in German culture enough to know if there's anything in that image that would trigger you.
Yeah.
That would say, we know, we've seen that before.
So the Anti-Defamation League is against.
And the Jewish Defense League and various organizations whose job it is to
And
keep
it's-
anti-Semitism down, they objected strenuously to the fact that this artist's work was being displayed as one of the Great 12, right? And then there was a second one, which really perked them up too.
Was that artist in any way part of any neo-Nazi?
Good question. That's what I wanted
Let's
to
save
know.
that question till the end.
Okay.
Okay, so this one it was called Guernica.
Like Picasso.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Here it is. Okay, good. All right. So what this artist did is they took famous paintings. May we see the screen? There we go. They took famous paintings and they kind of updated them.
Okay.
So in this painting, on the right-hand side is supposed to be a famous painting about peasants at a harvest and how they are impoverished.
Okay, is this like a famous Mexican painting or something?
I wish I
or
knew that.
Spanish?
So,
Yeah,
now,
I
Sanford knows a lot about art. Maybe he recognizes
Trying to
it.
see.
I don't recognize it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't either.
Like a Goya, maybe, huh?
Almost like a Goya, but I'm not an expert on art.
Yeah.
Could be.
Like Spain during Napoleonic.
Actually, the people, the faces of the people look dark. They're dark skinned, but it's hard to say. Yeah.
Now, on the left side,
Yeah.
the interpretation is those are Israeli commandos about to burst upon the impoverished people.
What's going on up here?
That I don't know.
Yeah. So who objects to this painting?
Also, the Jewish Defense League, the Anti-Defamation League.
Now, is there anything that would identify those soldiers as Israeli? Is there any kind of markings on their clothing? Or?
You know, can you see anything there, mystery guest? I can't either.
Because to be honest, I at first thought
No,
maybe
I
he was
can't.
a platoon of American grunts or dog faces from like the Nam era.
Okay, we can go back to the regular pictures.
Yeah.
All
So I don't see. I don't see it, but I don't know.
Now,
I don't know what their uniforms look like.
Okay.
All I know, the only thing I know about the Israeli soldiers is that when I was staying in a tent down in New Orleans, we had 2 Israeli soldiers who were guarding us, me and Gloria. We stayed in this tent, and these 2 Israeli soldiers thought it was unusual. I don't know why. Women are in their army. They took it upon themselves to guard us.
they were standing guard.
They were standing guard at our tent.
Did you feel safer?
I thought I had passed over into Oz or something.
So now here's the backstory, some of which you and the viewers will be familiar with. Countries, like individuals, can be haunted by their past.
Yes.
Now, an individual can always go see a therapist and try to work through this, but there is no therapist for whole countries. So they just have to deal with it. Okay? So Germany is attempting to deal with their past by showing this opposite type of art exhibition. All right? But now there are people saying for the first time ever, hey, Documenta, you crossed the line. In an effort to show the cutting edge, you're showing the thing you fear the most, namely your fascist past. And it's implicit in our interpretation of these paintings. That pushed the buttons of the curators of the exhibit.
What did they do?
Oh my God, we're German and we're drifting into anti-Semitism and we don't realize that what's happening with us. So what they did is they said to the 2 artists, one of whom, you know, the one with the clown and the Jewish banker, that person was from Indonesia. They said, you have anti-Semitism. He said, we had a dictator named Suharto. It's about Suharto.
Do you want to know something? Now that you say it was Indonesia, that devil thing,
Yeah.
I've seen wooden carvings from Indonesia that look like that.
Interesting.
I have seen they have like they have like bendable knees and arms, and you go to a little shop and you can buy these carved, colorful wooden figures, and they're Indonesian. And that's where I've seen that particular devil before. So
these groups are saying then to the curators who are saying that one there, that was Indonesian. They're saying, this is very postmodern, by the way. They're saying, okay,
this postmodern mean bullshit.
you decide. They're saying, well, that is the artist's interpretation. We're interested in the viewer's interpretation because all interpretations are equal.
But will all viewers see that same thing, or will only Israeli viewers see that thing?
Excellent point. That's an excellent point. So tell me if the Documenta people could have handled this better. They said to the 2 artists, sorry, we have to take you 2 out of the exhibit because we don't want to offend, us being German and everything, and we're very sensitive to being called anti-Semitic. We don't want to offend anyone.
Yes.
All the artists had a meeting, and they said, if you're kicking them out, we're leaving.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah, I
better way
agree
of
with that.
handling
And the
it.
curator
So do I.
said, you were between a rock and a hard place.
Okay.
So they shut it all down.
Oh, that's the wrong
All right,
thing to
Richard,
do, too.
this
Now,
is
question. There's going to be another Documenta, say, next year.
So what do they have to
So
do?
when they put out their call for work, what did they say to the artists?
No.
Don't worry, we got your back. We
No.
want the most
Just a
cutting
blank,
edge.
You know
just a
what?
blank canvas.
This
from
is
now
what
on.
this is what I think, and this is what they do on Turner Classic Movies. When they show movies that are now considered in bad taste because of they show slavery and they show the happy slaves and stuff. What they do is they have a commentator come on beforehand and explain that this was a time when this was happening politically and that was happening politically, and this is no longer the way people are expected to think about slavery and about this and about that. Not a disclaimer so much as the artist's statement about what the work is about. That should have satisfied.
Well, what about doing both?
But in this case,
Saying this is what the artist is interpreting this as. This is what the Jewish Defense League is interpreting.
Yes,
yes,
I
but-
love that.
but
I think that's perfect.
Also, this is different because Gone with the Wind clearly had racist overtones.
Of course.
These paintings don't. The guy's Indonesian. I would do a publicity campaign. This artist is Indonesian. He has no anti-Semitic intentions whatsoever.
But-
Anyone who sees that in this is not seeing it clearly.
Who is seeing it with a very narrow
Is a very
worldview.
biased worldview.
But I like Richard's idea that you put both interpretations, and I think that is very, very thought-provoking for people who didn't see it either way.
Yeah.
To say, okay, this is what I see, but look, this is what the artist meant, and this is what somebody interpreted this as.
Yeah.
How interesting that we all see things so differently. And I think that would be perfect for every piece of art at that exhibit, not just those two pieces. I mean, to get someone who, and maybe randomly, like pick somebody from China to do an interpretation of that piece of art, to have both side by side. I love that.
You know,
I love it.
It's interesting. Proust said at one point in his Remembrance of Things Past, he said, the saddest thing in the world is that no two people will ever see the same thing the same way and will never really fully be able to communicate.
See, it is sad in a way, but it's also great in a way because it gives us reason to communicate.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
true.
I mean-
yeah, and you can learn.
Yeah.
That's what makes horse races, as they say, right?
Yeah.
You can learn from the other side. Yeah.
So yeah, I really think that's the ideal. You should write to them
That's
and
good.
tell them that.
Yeah. You should be running it, Richard.
Well,
And Paula. You and Paula.
I was asking friends, what their thoughts were, and finally somebody, surprised me and said, "Well, what do you think should be done?"
Yeah.
I said, when they put out the next call for work, they put it on all these art
Yeah.
websites, call for work,
Yeah.
here's how much you get. First of all, I would jack up the price so that if you get accepted, you get even more money than usual. And if your work gets removed, you get a special I'm sorry payment, for your trouble.
I think that's altruistic. It would be nice.
Yeah, I mean that's nice, but I do think
Society
it
was
should
like that.
the art should be looked at. I think it should be looked at, and I love the idea that there'd be those two ideas next to each other. I think that,
I love your idea.
I think it's perfect. I mean, but with the addition of the other perspective, because it would be so instructive for anyone, even art lovers or non-art lovers, to see what's being seen in that painting. I think all paintings should have both of them. I mean, of course, a lot of them are dead painters right now, but
Well, you're saying something that's very dear to my heart, and that is all imagery requires text to be more meaningful. If you took Dali's painting of the melting clock,
yeah,
you gave it a different title instead of the persistence of memory,
Yeah.
it would change the meaning of the painting.
it does.
And just like that, if you put the two interpretations, you would be adding meaning to the painting.
Oh yeah, definitely adding meaning. But I mean, there's something to be said for going in cold and looking at a painting and coming up with your own interpretation. But if you do that, you think everybody thinks that. You don't get the impression that the artist meant something else or that somebody else is seeing something else. That would really widen the whole scope of viewing that painting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love that. I would go to, I go to art galleries a lot anyway, but I'd go more if I could read somebody else's interpretation like that right under the painting, so I could have it directly there.
Some art is clearer than other art, though. I mean, like the Pieta, I don't think is that complicated.
Yeah.
I almost don't think it needs to be called the Pieta. I understand it. It's a mother's grief over her dead son
Yeah.
in her arms. It's pretty clear. and it's a universal thing.
Well, a lot
Right.
of the old art is like that. But then again, if it's about a myth or if it's about a biblical subject, it's nice. It would be nice to have a little clarification.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone once said that very thing to Freud. They said, not all dreams should be interpreted. They said some are just pretty obviously nonsensical. And he said, well, there's an interesting story about that because a client came in to see me with his wife. And the client said, Professor Freud, I know you like to hear our dreams, but sometimes they're just plain stupid because I had a dream that I was sitting at the breakfast table with my wife, and she just handed me a plate of strawberries. And
Freud interpreted it as a sexual dream, of course.
Penis.
no,
something.
no. What? Here's the dream.
Detachable
Here's the
penis?
dream. I was sitting at the breakfast table with my husband, and I just handed him a plate of strawberries.
Uh-huh.
She goes, come on, Professor, let's admit it. There's nothing to that. And the husband said, oh dear, you forgot one important thing. I'm allergic to strawberries. The meaning of that little story is there's interpretations that you are not aware of.
Right.
Yeah.
So even with the Pietà,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah, that's
true.
probably true.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
So anyway, Brian, what are you reading?
Right now, I am reading. I've got a few books on the burner right now, but I've been reading actually something connected to Jewish people in a sense. It's an absolutely true account. It's Unlikely Warrior, a Jewish soldier in Hitler's army. And it
Wow.
was an 18 Georg Rausch.
Is this a actual like a diary or something, or is it a?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that's
In nine-
fascinating.
In 1943, in Austria, at the age of 19, his mother, who had a Jewish mother, so his grandmother was Jewish, but his father was Aryan. And his mother, George Rausch's mother, was from a noble family in Bavaria that lost all their money in a crash in the 1890s, just before World War I.
Uh-huh.
She was raised in a wealthy, well-to-do family, and they were Aryan and Jewish, but he was like a quarter Jewish. And when Hitler invaded Bavaria and sent his troops in and said, okay, Goebbels, they had the propaganda, now you're all going to hate Jews and you're all going to fight for, the 1,000-year Reich and all this. And his family, they were artists, musicians, and they were aghast. But he was 19, and any able-bodied man was conscripted. And he went to the headquarters in Bavaria and Vienna and told the Germans, I am part Jewish, you know that, right? He said, but you want me to join the army still? And they said, well, they knew he was like only a quarter Jewish or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you were half Jewish, it was a much bigger deal. Half or full. And so he gets conscripted in the army. He knew if he took off, they would kill him. He said any 19-year-old man wandering around Europe without papers who wasn't in the military would just be killed.
Yeah.
And
It seems outrageous, though.
But check this out. His mother, who was half Jewish, sheltered dozens of Jewish people that they helped escape from Bavaria while he went to fight on the Russian front. Reluctantly, but he had to go. And after the war, he moved to like California via New York City. And he's a very good artist. He's a painter. He's a fairly well-known painter. And he painted a lot of images that helped get the war out of his system. And apparently, I don't think he was involved in any atrocities or anything like that.
What's his name? Maybe Richard can look
Rausch?
up. Rauch?
Yes, it's Georg, not George. It's Georg. Georg Rausch.
What is the name? What is the name of the book?
It's Unlikely Warrior, a Jewish soldier in Hitler's army.
Okay, I'm intrigued by this.
Yeah, that
I'm
really is.
Yeah.
He's anti-war, basically. He talks about how some of the German soldiers from Bavaria that served with him also were like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we even in this war? It's a stupid war. They all knew by 1944, in that part of the book, all the German soldiers knew, the smart ones knew they were going to lose.
Right.
And they were being shipped to the Russia. And interestingly, in the book, the German army gets absolutely wiped out in Ukraine. In 1943 to 44, the German army group that went south to Ukraine and burned all the villages down in Ukraine and all that, the Russians came down from like the eastern part of Ukraine where they are occupying now. And
Wow.
the Germans were out of food and fuel and clothing. They were freezing to death, and the Russians crushed them. They killed.
Yeah, that's the cover of the book, but you couldn't
Could
find
we
any.
have the computer screen?
You couldn't find any artwork.
Wow.
Oh, you want to see the artwork that is in the book?
No, the artwork that he did. He was
That he did
apparently
after to get
he
it
was
out of his
apparently.
Oh, you're not interested? Okay, I got it. I got it.
He was
Georg Rausch's
apparently
art.
an artist
Yeah.
who worked on images that helped him deal with what he saw in the war. Which
PTSD.
And while you're looking,
Yeah.
Richard, it reminds me of what you said, that individual trauma, people can work it out, and you said nations can't. Maybe nations can, because maybe that art festival in Germany could have been used as an attempt to deal with their trauma.
Yeah.
Maybe art, I think art is a way for nations and cultures to deal with trauma.
I think
That's
so.
that's one of the reasons I think it's so important. Literature and cinema and music and poetry and morbid nursery rhymes. All these things do help us. I think they're
funny.
important.
It's funny, even in a week like this where I really did no reading. You learn something whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
Is that a painting of his?
Yeah. This is what George Rausch painted like.
To help him forget
Awesome.
his conflict of interest between his.
That's
so peaceful.
It's a very
it is
nice
peaceful.
image.
It's I like it.
Do you want to see another sample
Yeah,
of
I'd
his
love
work?
to.
Sure.
Okay.
It's calming me down. Maybe I'll sleep tonight. maybe
So
Oh,
that's,
sleeping.
there you
oh,
go.
look
That's
at
the
that.
one I need.
That's what
That's
you
the
need.
one I
Son of a
need.
bitch. Look at that.
Just to calm
And
down.
if he's sleeping next to you, maybe you'd sleep well also.
Yeah, no, maybe not. No, I don't know. Maybe there wouldn't
Is that a Nick, is it a
might
hand?
not be so easy to sleep.
Here's something a little bit more jovial.
Oh, I like.
Can we see this? There we go.
I like
There you go.
images of jesters. Or
Hey, it's a Jewish clown.
Harlequins.
Anti-Semitism
wait a minute. He's got a bowler. There's a
and a
bowler.
bowler hat.
Oh, God.
He's an anti. And I see a guy with a gun in the corner.
If you're playing
That's-
chess against the jester,
I,
are they going to just mess with you or try to win the game?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, good question.
I don't know.
Anyway, that's interesting. Is what you said you were reading more than one book though, Brian?
Yeah, I'm reading that book, When in Rome, that has very interesting history on the Vatican going back like almost 2,000 years. And
Uh-huh.
the building of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and it's a city unto itself. And this guy who's a Catholic, he's a journalist. He's been writing for magazines in the U.S., and he goes to the Vatican and worms his way in there, and it's very hard to get people to talk about what's going on and
Yeah.
what's happening. And then there's just really bizarre historical tidbits about the different popes and the prurient sex life they
Yeah,
had.
it's really. I know the Catholic history of the Catholic Church is pretty interesting, but it's certainly not holy.
Who's the writer of One in Rome?
Who's the author?
Yeah.
Hang on, I gotta go. I can't remember the guy's name now. It's right over here.
A lot of
Yeah,
people
Sarah
have named their
Adams.
books that.
Probably others. Robert Hutchinson.
Okay.
But it's pretty interesting. The different Yeah, there was some wild stuff in there about the popes in the Middle Ages, and
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stories like that. The Pope stories are ridiculous.
well, that and all the curious artifacts of like the toes and limbs and and skulls.
Yeah.
You know, they have the skull of Saint Paul. Like,
Here it is, Mr. Windsor. Yeah.
I have a theory that it always confused me. Like if Jesus was a biblical scholar, where's the stuff that he wrote?
He wasn't a biblical scholar. Well, he was well versed in the Bible.
He was able to discuss the Talmud with the biblical scholars. So he was. I want to know. He must have written something. I have this theory that it's locked up in the Vatican someplace, and it's so dangerous that it will never be let out because it's so different from what Christianity is.
Years old. He was in his early 30s. He didn't have time to even write everything down.
Did you write anything before you turned 30, Brian?
Yeah, but it was just poetry. It wasn't like
So?
full change.
I want to see it.
My poems could change reality if people understood them, and got outside their own ego sphere.
Yeah, I just have a theory that there's something locked up in the Vatican that we don't know about that Jesus wrote, and it's
Sure, there's a lot locked up in the
incendiary. We would never. It would not match what we're doing. What people do as Christians.
Do you think
some
there's like
similar
a grand
theories on
inquisitor
that.
in the Vatican who's preventing bad information
Something
from getting
like
out into
that.
the public?
There you go, Dostoevsky.
I think it's
himself.
just. I think, and if anything, it's been burned or it's hidden. I just like that idea. I just like it. I don't care if it's real. I just like it.
I get it.
So-
No, there is wild stuff in there and stuff that was under lock and key that he was not privy to.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's rumors, like for instance, the Fatima incident around the time of World War I, when the Spanish girls or Portuguese girls said they saw the Virgin Mary like 7 different times, and at one point 50,000 or 100,000 people saw it. And they say that whole account is locked up in there. And the last time the Virgin Mary appeared over a crowd of like 100,000 people or 50,000, whatever, it was a lot of people for that time, that she predicted the fate of the world, when the world was going to end, when World War III was going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you, we need a visitation of the Virgin Mary right now to get into that vault and take out that paperwork so we can take a look at it.
Wasn't there a
what we'll
letter? Wasn't there a letter that
Yeah.
was given to the Pope, and allegedly John Paul II read the letter and said, "Oh, it's not that bad," or I forget if he
I
revealed
thought
it.
he burned it.
He burned it. Did he burn it? I don't know.
Let's
I
see,
don't
Brian
remember.
would know.
Did he reveal the contents?
No, he just said in general that it wasn't what people thought, but that there were things that they could not yet reveal.
Oh, that's helpful. That's helpful. That's helpful. It's not what you think, but I can't tell you.
All right.
I'm not going to tell you.
So anyway, I think we're off the Vatican. Tony, are you still reading murder books?
Yeah, but it's not so much what I'm been reading is what I'm gonna get to read after tomorrow.
Which is?
I got my hands on it's called "Let's Go to Hell: Scattered Memories of the Butthole Surfers."
Oh, that's right. You just told me that, and of course I promptly forgot because my brain is so fried. But yeah, that should be fun. That's the band, the Butthole Surfers. My friend. Oh, in fact, I should see if Patty. I always loved the Butthole Surfers. That's exactly
Nice.
what she said.
We should talk.
Yeah, Patty's pretty. Yeah, cool, great shirt. She said.
Thanks.
Yeah, my friends are all a little odd, but so you're
Is that
gonna,
a book, Tony?
I honestly have not
Did you
been
get-
able to get past like say the jacket description, but being an avid fan of the band and listening to their music, seeing videos and everything, I think it's guaranteed guaranteed to be one hell of a wild ride.
So you got the book already?
It was just delivered to the Cuba address. So
Oh, so
I'll be
you
up
have
there
it-
for dinner tomorrow, and
Yeah.
I'll pick it up.
Okay.
Good, proper etiquette reading among Republicans.
Well, I'm glad you've gotten. I know it's always exciting to get a new book.
Okay, I found the cover page, Tom.
There we are.
Okay.
There it is.
Let's go to hell. That's nice. Very nice. So,
Good.
so that's your reading. And how about you, mystery guest?
Well, I've been a little tired lately, as you've heard.
I've heard.
But
you.
I have been still wading through Balzac, and I'm determined to
That
read
might
the
be
entire
why.
thing.
That,
And
yeah.
right now, I'm reading a short. Well, it's a novella called A Second Home.
Uh-huh.
And every piece that I read by him, my admiration and respect for this man's technique and his mastery of storytelling
Yeah.
increases. And I haven't finished it yet, but what it's about is this poor young woman who is a seamstress, and she works with her mother right near the Paris Parliament building in the center of the city of Paris.
Right.
And this is about 1815, right when Napoleon's been sent to St. Helena.
Yeah.
And things have changed. And that was 1816 was it was 1816, sorry, very tough year for they're very poor. And every day, this young man walks by their house. There it is, and can just look through the window, and he can see the light on this young woman's face. And the mother sees the young man every day, and she thinks in her mind, my daughter should really get with this guy, right?
Hook up. Yeah.
she needs an escape, and he looks like he's pretty successful.
Yeah.
And one day the daughter looks, and their eyes meet. Nothing. And the next day, their eyes meet again, and a little bit more of a smile on the daughter's face. Long story short, they do develop a relationship. And it's extraordinarily beautiful. I generally utterly detest love stories. I find them revolting. This is so, it's so beautiful that I wanted to fall down and cry. And there's a moment they get married and they have a baby, and there's this scene. He paints like a painter. She's got her baby in the arms, and the baby's suckling at her breast, and the husband comes into the room, and the light hits her like a Caravaggio painting, and he just looks in adoration at his wife. But I have a suspicion, because knowing Balzac, he is a very cynical,
Yeah.
pessimistic man, and I have a feeling something really bad is going to happen to their relationship. I don't know what. It's like the
Here
one
it
that,
comes,
like the
yeah.
Passion in the Desert, where the man falls in love with the leopard, and he has to kill it at the end. And it's the most beautiful love story I've ever read. There's another one. I hate love stories. It's
Yeah.
about a man and a
Well,
leopard
love
falling in
stories
love.
are generally
Oh, I know the-
syrupy.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot of that, so
no,
it's depressing.
But
So-
even in a life that's had an abundance of love stories.
Yeah.
I don't like reading love stories or a lot of times love songs because they're just so
Sappy.
syrupy,
Yeah.
unrealistic.
I agree.
Just kind
Yeah.
of. There's
But-
just little certain ones that really get it, but
But with him, there's a strength to it. There's a convincing believability to it, and he has this cynicism. Like, I heard this expression once. It wasn't from him. I think it was from an Italian writer whose name I can't. Lampedusa. He said, "Marriage, flames for a year, ashes for 30." Which I thought was just beautiful, And I have a feeling the ashes are coming, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
The difference between a marriage built on romance and a marriage built on friendship are like
Yeah. Well,
two different
you
things.
and Greg, I have to say, I am in awe and admiration of your relationship, because I think you are a template, a model, and a great example for people who, if someone did want to get married, that would be the way to make it work, because you do make it work. And I think you have a beautiful relationship, and I think about that a lot, actually.
I mean, we don't agree on anything, but we laugh about it.
Right.
We don't agree. We
Yeah.
hardly agree on anything.
For the
it
most
works,
part, I
but it
think
seems
that
to
marriage
work.
is like a long, redundant meal with dessert at the beginning.
Yeah, I never wanted to get married. I wouldn't have never gotten married again. I thought it was a horrible, horrible thing to do. I thought, why did I do this to myself? This is horrible. But it's not like that if you're with somebody who is open-minded and is their own person. I don't want to be one person with two heads.
Like he's out doing his thing tonight,
Right,
and you're
exactly.
doing your thing.
And
Yeah.
I had no intention of going, and he had no intention of coming here, so here we are.
There you go.
I
But-
wish we could all be that lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is lucky because most of the time, especially with men, they've tried to subsume my being in, like, you belong to me.
Yeah, that's not a healthy.
And you are, so I don't, that never worked for me. But, all right, so we've made it around the bend here. Got another thing on your...
Sure. Two stories from the news. This summer, Panama City Beach, an ocean city, a city on an ocean. Two boys are out for a swim. They got caught in a rip current, and they started shouting to their mother, "We can't get back, we can't get back," because it kept pulling them.
Yeah.
So she and a couple other family members, they ran out to get them. But then they got caught in the current,
Oh,
and
no.
they couldn't get back. An amazing thing happened, right? All the people on the beach, approximately 70 to 80 of them, they locked arms, and they went one by
Whoa,
one
wow.
by one, and they brought all the people
Isn't that
back in.
something?
Holy
else.
cow.
Now,
What a great idea.
I want to compare that to another story.
Okay.
Walter Vance, age 61, he was out on Good Friday shopping for bargains.
Yeah.
And you know how Good Friday is the big capitalist day of the year. Where
Black Friday.
Black
Sorry.
Friday.
not Good Friday.
Black
I was going to say,
Friday.
we're not, it's not Easter.
Yeah.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
correction. Okay, so the store was mobbed and the doors opened up. Everybody rushed in. Walter Vance grabbed his chest and fell to the ground. And the other shoppers did nothing. They
Where-
just went around him
Where
to go and
where
get the
did
bargains.
This happen?
It doesn't say.
Yeah. Sounds like a New York shopping trip.
There were even people who stepped over him
Yeah.
as he was laying on the ground holding his chest. Eventually, someone saw him who was a medical professional, stopped to give him CPR, but by then he was too far gone and he had
Wow.
died.
Yeah. That's.
Look at the two different stories.
Yeah. It's,
Why so different?
These people relaxing on the beach, they were feeling good and loving humanity at the moment, and the other people just wanted stuff.
Yeah, that's my interpretation.
In touch with nature versus capitalism.
Yeah, capitalism does something to the minds of the people who are governed by it.
Yeah, and I can attest. I mean, I've shopped on Christmas Eve in New York, and I can tell you it was quite an experience.
But those people who linked arms were capitalists as well. They live in a Why can't
They didn't have a
capitalism-
capitalist mindset.
At
They were
that
there.
moment,
They were there to
at
relax.
that moment, that's
They're
true.
away from the capitalist
But why does
poison.
capitalism always have to be a problem? Isn't it possible to be compassionate and run a business and make a profit and take care of your family?
It is.
If I
It
own a
is.
shoe
It is.
if I own a shoe store and I sell shoes and I sell them for a fair price and I make good quality product and I take care of my family with that money and I help people and I'm a generous person, that's capitalism in
Okay.
my opinion. Then what's wrong with that?
So-
You couldn't do that in a communist country.
No, all
You'd
right.
be fucked. You'd be a
So-
zombie like the rest of
So
them.
I think
Consumer greed.
Yeah, greed. That was the word I was just going to go for. I think the kind of capitalism we have in this country has bred a kind of greed that is deadly.
Sickness.
It's deadly.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to see. I want to see this in the world. I want to see us have these businesses that people own. They're willing to sell it at a fair price. They don't
Yeah.
want their profit to be up here
Yeah.
because they don't have stockholders. The stock market is one of the biggest problems. The stock market, they want their stock prices to go up because they want to be able to give dividends to all these rich people who own their stock, instead of just saying, okay, I have this shoe business and I've sold 100 pairs of shoes this month at X amount of dollars, and look, my expenses were this, my my intake was this: I was able to not only to support myself and my family, but put some money away in the bank
And contribute.
That's the real American dream of capitalism, but it doesn't work like that
And
anymore.
contribute to the welfare of other people who
Yeah.
buy your product.
Right.
That's good quality
No,
stuff.
right, but also,
making the world a better
you're
place.
paying taxes, which also contributes to the welfare of,
Yeah.
of the many. But the thing is, that is the communism. That is the consumerism and the capitalism that our country is supposed to be based on. That's what it started as, but it's not that now.
Well, you gotta stop people like my cousin. And I'll tell you, my Repub cousin, he will proudly tell you that he thrives for. He loves going out on Black Friday to get everything for Christmas. He loves the energy. He loves the frantic everything. For him, it's like the damn running of the bulls, only you get a friggin' toaster. You know what? I like to see someone stop him to death.
I love.
Neil, I'm sorry. I take that back. Black Friday shouldn't even be.
I love that analogy. I love it. I love the running of the bulls and the people going shopping on Black Friday. I
It
love
is,
it.
you know?
It's so because it is that rush. It's that same rush of doing something like barreling forward in a against the odds. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I'm reminded of what Richard says often. I think if this culture we have, the society we have now, was tempered by what Richard talks about all the time, altruism. And that comes from setting an example, which is education. It's how you raise your children, and it has to be across the board. And if we did that, I think we could have a healthy society where people were more generous.
Well,
and
that's-
where you're genuinely, you want to give something back. I do.
Yeah.
That's how I feel as a teacher. I want to give something to my students,
But-
and I feel the money I get is not great, but it's, I think I've earned it, and I feel good
All right,
about that.
so-
I feel we should have more teachers
So-
like you.
Thank you.
As a teacher, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
Instead of suspension or detention, taking kids out into the community to help at soup kitchens.
Wonderful idea.
Yeah.
And to work with the homeless.
I think that's a great idea.
And not only having to do that as not so much as a punishment, but as a learning experience, but also just having to do that in high school, having to go out like maybe a couple hours every week as a class someplace to help people, like at a
100% with that.
at a place where they're giving out free food.
I think that's a beautiful thing.
Because then they would see that not everyone has because kids, first of all, they think that the food just shows up in the refrigerator. They don't know, they don't think about where it comes from
well-
and who has to pay for it. But
We've done a whole series of lessons on that recently, and one of the statistics I came across recently, I still find it hard to believe, but it probably is true, and maybe Richard might know more about this than I do. I found that nearly 50% of the people on planet Earth right now live on less than $5.50 a day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Can you believe that?
yeah, I know, Brian.
All this abundance that we have.
And did you-
why should that be the case?
And did you know, this is a statistic that I heard this week. Since we went to the moon, which was what, 64?
69.
Oh, 69, sorry. All right. The population of the Earth has doubled.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well-
You're right. It was around 4 billion then. It's 8 billion now, right?
8 billion. You want to get your mind blown from that, though? My grandfather was born in 1910. There was only 1 billion.
Wow.
My God.
Wow.
1910 to
Isn't
2022,
that something?
we added 7 billion more. It took tens of thousands of years for the human population to reach 1 billion, and it was right before my grandpa was born at the turn of the 1900s.
But another mind-blowing statistic is that 50%, 100, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, would have been 95% of the human race that was living in abject poverty. We're doing something a lot better. I would say, certainly in civilized times, the last 7,000 years, the quality of life for the majority of people right now is far better than it ever has been. Things are so much better than they ever have been on the planet, probably in 100,000 years.
People not starving to death.
Overall.
Although, food insecurity is still a huge problem.
It is, but compared to 100 years ago.
But
I
now,
will-
they in Arizona, there's water problems, big water problems. They've been disconnected from the Colorado. Below Phoenix, there's farmland, and that farmland has been disconnected from the Colorado River, and Phoenix is still running their fountains. And I mean, I think to myself, what's more important? That farmland, that's what feeds those people that live there. That farmland was disconnected, and they're still running their fountains and watering lawns. There's still stupid people who have lawns in Phoenix. I mean,
Well, let me relate something to you. I mean, this is a few years old, but it's still relevant, I think, because it seems to mirror American greed and capitalism. I remember reading once an article about a lingerie model, and she's like, what, young enough to be my kid now. For her birthday, she treated herself to some big, ridiculous tank of a vehicle. I think it was like $75,000, $80,000. I'm thinking to myself, this is friggin' disgusting. Okay, she treated herself to a birthday Sherman tank to put on the roads, and meanwhile, here's someone, being rousted off the streets in LA who try to get out there to better their life and only ended up, tossed like a piece of scrap.
well,
Disgusting.
I was listening to NPR on the way over here, and they were talking about Florida and the storm in Florida.
Oh, God.
And there are a bunch of people that are in between homeless and housed, and those are the people that live in these small trailers and trailer parks. And the people that live in these trailer parks, they're very low income, and they can't afford the new trailers that are built to survive these storms. So they buy the old trailers, which are really cheap, because they don't survive the storms. So all of these people now that were in this trailer park that got destroyed are now basically homeless, because their Social Security income is $600 or $700 based on what they earned in their lifetime, and that's the only income they have every month. And the one guy, I think he had like $900 of Social Security, and his rent for the land he kept his trailer on was $575 of the money that he got from his Social Security check. The rest was what he lived on.
Wow.
And that's how he lived. And now he doesn't have a home because his trailer was flattened by the storm. And he's in his 80s.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, Florida's in trouble with global warming. 1/3 of Florida will be underwater by the end of the century.
Well, I mean, okay, so these greedy property owners that have been buying, or investors that have been buying up all the properties and renting them out at exorbitant prices. This is why we have a housing crisis, and nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about the fact that these people, they have money, they come in with cash, and they buy up these homes. Now, they're buying up the trailer parks, and so the rents in the trailer parks are going from what used to be like $200 a month for that little piece of land that you put your trailer on to, there's a place in Alden now where the rents went from like $275 to almost $1,000, and these people can't afford to live there because it was bought by another investor. This is what's happening, and no one's
again.
and because I've tried, I've called my congressperson and all this other stuff, and I've said, look, can't they do something? Can't they say only people who are going to live in the house, give them a 30-day window where they are the only ones who can make an offer? And they said no, because it interferes with free enterprise.
Free market.
Where's their
Free
freedom?
market. Where are the people's freedoms that want to own a house and have a
Bless
stable
you,
place
Tom.
to live? Those bastards.
I know.
Yeah.
hedge fund managers on Wall Street buy up all that real estate and then they jack the rents.
Well, not only that, Brian, but the people, there's properties in Lovejoy. The properties like in Lovejoy that are bought up, they're bought by people in China and in England.
I know.
I'm gonna say
they do
goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Laters.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you.
Oh,